Welcome to the October 19th, 2020 meeting of the Gaston County Board of Education. I'm Britt Moore, Crowders Mountain Township, and Chairman of the Board. And at this time, I would like to ask the other board members to introduce themselves.
Lee Dedman, Gastonia Township.
Justin Davis, South Point Township.
Kevin Collier, Riverbend Township.
Jeff Ramsey, at-large member.
Dot Cherry, at-large member.
Dot Guthrie, Gastonia Township.
Unmute Mr. Hall.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Steve Hall, Dallas Township.
thank you. On behalf of the board, I would like to welcome everyone to our meeting this afternoon. I would also like to extend our thanks to all of you teachers, students, parents, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, and principals for all you are doing to see we educate our students in a safe way. Our first order of business is to have our prayer and pledge of allegiance. I would like to ask Dr. Booker, please the invocation and pledge.
Thank you. Let us pray. Father God, this is the day that you have made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. Although the days of recent times do not look like the days we had expected, we know not what tomorrow has, but we know that you have those days. We ask that you help us to see the good in each day. Help us find reasons to rejoice and to be glad. Please fill our lives with laughter, lightheartedness, even in these trying times. We thank you for the loyal members of our teaching staff and all that they have done and how they have met students in so many different ways. You have created each of them with unique gifts, and we thank you for those gifts. We thank you for the Board of Education and our principals, and we ask that you put blessing on their lives and their livelihood. May these leaders of our schools be blessed with wisdom and energized to inspire all that work in our schools during this difficult time. We ask that you continue to watch over us, Lord, and to guide us and to protect us in ways that we do not even know. We just thank you for all that you are. Amen. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance by standing. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our next order of business is to adopt the agenda. You have a proposed agenda before you. Do I hear a motion? Ms. Cherry, second Mr. Ramsey. All in favor? And it's unanimous. Our next order of business is to hear good news happening in our schools. Dr. Booker, give us some good news.
Thank you, sir. Members of the board, I look forward to the day that we can have individuals back here with us so that we can celebrate them in person. But as many of you know, we are fortunate to be able to nominate a North Carolina Beginning Teacher of the Year every year. And this year, our nominee is Mr. James Robinson, who is the music teacher at Belmont Central Elementary. It was my pleasure a few weeks ago to join Mr. Clinton and his staff in greeting Mr. Robinson and acknowledging all the great work he has done as a beginning teacher in Gaston County. So he is now part of one of 28 nominees from across the state that will compete for the state award, and we wish him the best. We also have a group of students who are representing their schools as nominees for the U.S. Presidential Scholar in Career and Technical Education distinction. Our nominees are Peyton Boone from Bessemer City High School, Lindsay Lingerfelt from Cherville High School, Travania Williams from East Gaston High School, Valerie Farfan from Forest View High School, and Octavia Smith from Hunter Huss High School. It is our honor to recognize these students and all that they have done in career and technical education, and that's how they have been nominated for the Presidential Scholar Award. It's a significant thing just to be nominated, and we're proud of each of them. Also, we'd like to recognize Wesley Brandon of Bessemer City High School and Rhoda Kirkpatrick of Hunter Huss High School. They were selected to participate in the Youth Apprenticeship 321 program that is part of Gaston College. This gives students an opportunity to take college classes in the College Now program and through career and technical education to earn special credentials. These students are also able to learn about local companies and apprenticeship programs that are offered, which often lead to career possibilities directly out of high school. So it's safe to say that these two young individuals have taken the right steps towards a promising career. Just a personal note, recently Sadler Elementary hosted a special activity to observe the birthday of one of our former superintendents, Dr. Ed Sadler. Each student received a book and a birthday cookie prepared by the cafeteria staff. The children in first grade, kindergarten, and second grade received the Potato Pants book, and students third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade received the Sideways Story from Wayside School book. It was a great day to celebrate his legacy. It's a shame that he wasn't there to read each of those books. He was such a gifted person with children. We also would like to share an event at Sherwood. This was really exciting, and you all know Sherwood has a long history of a great arts program, and students in the fourth and fifth grade classes participated in Tiny Broadway virtual program. They spent time learning about performing arts from musical theater professionals, and their music teacher, Ann Bame, coordinated the activities for the students, and we appreciate all that she's doing to show that the arts can still be celebrated in the pandemic. And I would just say that's one great example of what our teachers are doing to go above and beyond in these trying times. And so our last good news, sir, is Carr Elementary and WC Friday recently received a donation of school supplies from Walmart in Dallas. It's just a great example of one of the many business partnerships we enjoy in this community, and we wanted to thank Walmart for providing these schools in the Dallas area with these supplies. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that's our good news for tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Booker. Our next item on the agenda is public expression. Before we begin public expression, let me outline the rules of procedure. Do we want those folks to come in? Citizens wishing to make public comment and who have completed a request to speak form will be recognized by the chair and then requested to step to the microphone for their comments. Citizens will also state their name and address for the record. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. The members of the board do not comment on public expression during public expression. Public expression does not allow for comments on confidential or personnel matters. The chair shall rule on all points of order during public expression. One thing I'll say, again, comments will be limited to 3 minutes. We've run into some issues before with that. So, Sherry Willis.
Good evening, Chairman Moore, Vice Chairman Collier, Dr. Booker, and school board members. My name is Sherry Willis. I live at 400 River Park Road. I am Secretary for the Gaston County NCAE. I'm addressing you today on behalf of my members, fellow educators, and Gaston County Schools students. All educators in this county have been on the front lines of the Plan B initiative for opening schools. While there have been many changes this school year, we have risen to the challenge of teaching our students both in person and remotely. We've spent countless hours making sure our students have everything they need to learn, from breakfast and lunch to tech support and supplies to complete work at home. We have provided for our students. NCAE has been instrumental in ensuring that meals are provided for all students at no cost by contacting legislators to approve the USDA waiver and a hold harmless provision for average daily membership of our schools. Gaston NCAE continues to communicate with Dr. Booker and his team about reopening our elementary schools under Plan A. There are many things on which we as educators agree. Students learn best in the classroom with a teacher. They need social interaction and they need the predictability and routine of school. While these are beliefs all educators have, we also know that a child's safety and health are the main priority. Social distancing is still recommended under Plan A. Students cannot stay socially distanced in their classroom if everyone is in attendance. Students cannot learn if they are sick and required to be away from school for 2 weeks. Students cannot learn if their teachers are not at school to teach them due to illness or exposure. Given that an elementary school in our county has been shut down due to a cluster of COVID cases, that COVID cases are on the rise at this time, and that a third grade teacher in Stanley County has tragically died from COVID in the last 2 weeks, we believe strongly that opening elementary schools under Plan A should be delayed until our number of cases and rate of positivity on COVID is better. We also believe that safety measures like wearing masks, reducing the amount of travel and transitions in hallways, and washing hands frequently should remain in place to keep students and staff safe. Everyone from students to school staff should continue to follow all protocols and procedures to keep everyone safe and well, both mentally and physically. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Roshini Armacy, am I saying that right?
Roshini Amarasinghe.
Armacy, okay.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Oh, what? Oh, I'm sorry.
You're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Roshini Amarasinghe. I've been living in Gastonia since I was 3, except for my undergrad years at Chapel Hill. And I am a co-organizer of the Retire the Red Raider Coalition. And I am speaking by request of Greg Richardson, the Executive Director of the NC Commission of Indian Affairs. So I'll start to read the letter. Dear Chairman Moore and Board of Education members, the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs was created in 1971 by the NC General Assembly to deal fairly and effectively with Indian affairs in the state of North Carolina. The chairman of the commission's Culture Committee has brought the matter of South Point High School's Red Raider mascot to our attention and requested that we respond accordingly. We have also received information from citizens in Gaston County calling for the retirement of the South Point Red Raider mascot and all imagery associated with it. We believe that the portrayal of American Indians as mascots is demeaning and detrimental to American Indians and should not be utilized in an educational environment. American Indian mascots and logos and sports team nicknames are discriminatory and detrimental to the self-identity, self-concept, and self-esteem of American Indians. Therefore, we recommend that the Red Raiders mascot and all other American Indian mascots be retired for all schools in Gaston County. Information regarding the negative impact of American Indian mascots is referenced on page 71 of the State Advisory Council on Indian Education report to the North Carolina State Board of Education titled 2020 Vision for Culturally Responsive Classrooms Through Tribal Consultation. The North Carolina State Board of Education approved a recommendation in June 2002 indicating that public school administrators and local boards of education should review their policies and procedures regarding the use of American Indian mascots, logos, and other demeaning imagery and make changes as needed. The North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs strongly encourages the Gaston County Board of Education to retire all American Indian mascots, logos, and sports team nicknames presently being utilized by the school system. Finally, we request that this letter be read during the public comment period of this meeting. Sincerely, Gregory A. Richardson, Executive Director of the NC Commission of Indian Affairs. Thank you.
Lydia McCaskill.
Good evening. My name is Lydia McCaskill. I am a native here of Gaston County. I am a graduate of the Gaston County Public School System. I am now a graduate master's Juris Doctor student at North Carolina Central University, which speaks to the type of education Gaston County schools give to their students. Today, however, I am here to discuss the concern and disdain many people found with an assignment recently given to seventh graders after a concerned mother posted the assignment after her daughter became very emotional about such an assignment. Now, the assignment read, after watching the videos, write a diary journal entry as if you were a captured slave, or create a video journal of what your experiences were like to be traded property. Now, many people found this completely unacceptable. If this is one isolated individual teacher, then that teacher needs to be reprimanded immediately. Without taking into consideration the current social climate, this assignment otherwise is demeaning and dehumanizing for young students of color. Also insensitive to think one could simply portray traded property or what experiences were like to be traded property. The students were given a European-based lesson on slavery and then asked to write a diary as if they were a captured slave. I do not have children, but I know as a student, I would definitely have been in opposition of this assignment. Also, my parents would have backed up my opposition. I wouldn't then, and I will not now as an adult, even attempt to fathom the things my ancestors went through. I would argue the 2020 morally humane brain can't even begin to imagine those things. In my higher education, I've read firsthand accounts and studied our history other than the whitewashed version presented in the European-based school system. Reading, understanding, comprehending, that is one thing, but to write an assignment, but to be given an assignment to make a video or as if to tell them, I think that's not only disrespectful to ask of students, but it is also disrespectful to the ancestors that went through these experiences in which their true plight is not taught in the European-based school system. The assignment to me is just horrendous. It's nothing wrong with teaching the children the history. That is not the argument here. I think more of the real history should actually be taught. That's not what's going on here. But what assignment, what does this teach seventh graders? Please consider any and all curriculum in Gaston County, likewise, an assignment as the one presented to be taken out and replaced with other assignments proven to be beneficial in teaching these very important African American history. There has been much research done on how to teach students this, especially students of color. I would love to enter in some research for that, specifically research concerning post-traumatic slave trauma. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments and continued concern for Gaston County Schools. Although the board does not typically respond during public comment, we do want to hear from the public and direct staff on those issues that need to be addressed. Thank you for your comments. Our next item on the agenda is the approval or corrections from our September 21st, 2020 meeting. I need a motion. Second. Any discussion? All in favor? And it's unanimous. Our next item on the agenda is National Principals Proclamation, Month Proclamation. This is an action item, and we have Mr. Todd Higgins.
Good evening, Chairman Moore, Vice Chairman Collier, members of the board, and Superintendent Booker. October is National Principals Month. The annual observance is sponsored by the National Association of Elementary School Principals and the National Association of Secondary School Principals in partnership with other education organizations. This year we have a proclamation to present to you for consideration, and at this time I would like to read the proclamation. Whereas October is designated National Principals Month in recognition of principals, assistant principals, and all school administrators for their energetic, inspiring, and visionary leadership and their steadfast commitment to the success of every student. And whereas in addition to establishing high academic expectations and managing day-to-day operations, school administrators are responsible for collaborating with students, teachers, parents, and community leaders to provide a safe, inclusive, and inviting school environment where the shared belief that public education is the cornerstone of our democracy is paramount. And whereas, while faced this year with unprecedented challenges As a result of the coronavirus, school administrators have shown great tenacity and resilience to support teachers, students, parents, and others while ensuring that quality teaching and learning continue even during a pandemic. And whereas we are extremely proud of our school administrators, and we sincerely appreciate their dedication and their willingness to inspire success and a lifetime of learning every day. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Gaston County Board of Education is pleased to join other boards of education across the United States in proclaiming October 2020 as National Principals Month, and encourages the citizens of Gaston County to recognize, honor, and thank all school administrators for their many outstanding efforts to guarantee excellence in education in our community. Be it further resolved that this proclamation be made a part of the minutes of the Board of Education adopted the 19th day of October 2020. And Mr. Chairman, this proclamation is before you for consideration and approval.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the principal's proclamation.
Mr. Collier,
second.
second. Mr. Davis, any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Guthrie.
I would like to take just a few minutes to look at the wording that was used in the proclamation, tenacity and resilience. We want to truly let our principals know that what you did in August and the months before, that we greatly appreciate you, because you had to start from the very beginning. You laid a foundation for our teachers and for our children. To me, it was as if you were building confidence, security, safety, and educational strategies for teachers to learn new platforms, all the while you had to model your leadership skills. We greatly appreciate celebrating this Principals Month with you, because we know that you have families too, and that you were just as concerned about the pandemic as we were all. Yet you stepped forward and you fulfilled responsibilities, and you went beyond to make certain that our schools are as safe as they can be, and that our children are in learning environments that make a difference. I want you to know that I greatly appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Guthrie. Any more comments? Mr. Usry?
If my mind serves me correctly, and that's a question, during the effective principals training that I received years ago, there was a quote that I've never seen a good school without a good principal. And from my past experience in working with another gentleman who was pastor of the church, everything rises or falls on leadership. You've got to have good leaders. And I am grateful, as Ms. Guthrie is grateful, for the type of administrators that we have in Gaston County Schools. And I think it's our responsibility as a board to seek quality, high quality individuals to fill those positions in the school system. So I applaud all of our principals for National Principals Month.
Thank you, Mr. Usry. Mr. Ramsey?
As Terry just mentioned, we just want to recognize all the principals, even the assistant principals also, for their leadership through these difficult times, trying to implement in Plan B and get our students back in the classroom. So I know they've done a great job, and it's been very difficult for them, but we appreciate their hard work.
Ms. Cherry?
You know you can't go without me saying something. Simply put, this has been interesting year of a lot of planning, but without our principals, our assistant principals, and as Ms. Willis said, without our teachers, we couldn't have implemented the things that we've done. So to mimic Ms. Guthrie and Mr. Usry, they are the guiders in our school systems and in our schools. And our teachers have taken their guidance and have done beautifully with the tasks that we have at hand, that they've added to their plates other than doing what they do so well, and that's teaching our children. So thank you, principals.
Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could just add just a few things. One of the things I think is very important to mention is that our principals took on things that they'd never done before. Now, a lot of us through this whole COVID saga have done just that, but our principals have done it, and we asked them to do it from a very early date. We went to Plan B when almost no other of the 10 largest school districts were doing that, because we knew we could do it safely and we could do it well and get our kids in school, and we did it, and our principals helped us implement that. And what they've done to allow us to do that and to do so safely for the safety of our students and our staff and our teachers has been fantastic. And so my hat goes off to them for their hard work, their courage, and for everything they've done in implementing something that nobody had ever done before, and that other school districts didn't have the courage to tackle when we did. And so thank you to them.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Anyone else? Got a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And it's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Our next item on the agenda is Operations Committee report. This committee is made up of Mr. Kevin Collier, Mr. Jeff Ramsey, Mr. Steve Hall, and the chairman of that committee is Mr. Lee Dedman. And I believe Mr. Dedman is bringing us that report.
I am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We met on October the 5th at the Belmont Construction Trailer. In present, I was there, Mr. Collier, Mr. Ramsey, Mr. Hall. Our agenda, Dr. Booker, our superintendent, briefly discussed the current situation with Gaston County schools and COVID-19. He shared with us that he has met with NCA members, principals, district leadership to discuss certain concerns. He also shared with us that a plan should be brought before the school board at our next meeting. I really appreciate Dr. Booker getting some input from all these people, and we said that at the meeting with him. Curtis Poplin from our Technology Support Service Department gave us an update on the SmartNet Citgo renewal. Last year, the price was $458,000, and it's expected that there will be a decrease in the price for this year. We like to have decreases in prices. We don't hear that very often. The Operation Committee is recommending the contract as a consent agenda item this evening. Our Chief Financial Officer, Gary Hoskins, shared with us that we have started with the year with our 3 bond proposals and are nearing the end of the $60 million allotment out of the $250 million allotment. I noticed that one of our county commissioners are with us tonight, and I'm sure that he probably has another $60 million in his pocket ready to hand us. He's going to it now. Chip Irby, the Director of Facilities, informed us that many projects that facilities are working on currently. They include roofing projects, elevator updates, life safety, painting, paving, and tennis courts. And we talked about it in the meeting. Some of these things are so hard to see. We're spending a lot of bond money, but when you put a new roof on a building and when you do air conditioner work, it's really difficult for that to see. So we've instructed Mr. Higgins, and hopefully Dr. Booker will follow up with him, to make sure that we are getting out to the community what we have done in each community, because we have diligently tried to spread the money around of our bond money to all our areas. The Executive Director of Auxiliary Service, Morgan Hershard, gave us the update back to school. He stated that the Transportation Department has done great work since the start of this year. They continue to work on many potential options for our future. Our School Nutrition Department has served over 1.2 million grab-and-go lunches since March of this year. They continue to feed healthy, nutritious meals to all of our students, regardless of their learning environment. The Facilities Committee continues to work on capital projects, COVID relief effort, the beautification of our schools. Our Safety Security Department has continued to ensure school safety and started conducting the yearly safety audits. They will present all these plans to us in December. Dr. Houchard also discussed a state widening project in Cramerton, a Cherryville High School land prospect, and a potential proposal from the city of Cramerton for a joint agreement with land use by Stuart Kramer. An update was given on the roof at Stanley Middle, and the meeting was concluded with a walk through the new Belmont School. Really impressed with the construction people, the architect. Belmont Middle is a beautiful facility. I would like, Mr. Chairman, to recommend that at sometime right after the first of the year, before we have our dedication and everything, that we invite our county commissioners to come over and visit the school too. I think that would be a good thing. I'll let you decide on that. Our next meeting is scheduled for November the 2nd in the boardroom. And if we have enough on the agenda, we'll have that meeting. That's all we have.
Thank you, Mr. Devon. Our next item on the agenda is the Curriculum and Instruction Committee report. That committee is made up of Ms. Dot Cherry, Mr. Justin Davis, Mr. Terry Ushery, and the chairwoman, Ms. Dot Guthrie. And I believe that Ms. Cherry is bringing that report.
I am. We met on Monday, October 5th, the same day the operations met at 12 o'clock. And members present were myself, Dot Guthrie, and Justin Davis. Meeting was called to order at 12:02. We approved the minutes from our previous meeting, which was way back in February, so we had a lot of catching up to do. Dr. Booker also visited us and went over the same information that Mr. Dedman shared with us, so I'm not gonna repeat that, if that's okay. Student Assignment had developed a process to communicate with families digitally through their Scribbles dashboard. Title I continues supporting 30 schools in the district with a strong focus on family engagement initiatives. ESL students are served virtually on the days they have remote learning. The Aspire Day program operates Monday through Friday and serves students on their remote learning days. Student support services shared that discipline incidents are down significantly, compared to this time last year. CTE has added new programs in middle and high schools. Health services partnerships continue to provide sponsoring a drive-by teen immunization clinic and mobile dental clinics for kindergarten students. The Department of Exceptional Children's programs have expanded virtual-related services. The program has open hubs for testing and other services. The AIG program has started virtual classes as well. Elementary instruction continues to personalize learning for students so that they will have the same learning experiences whether they're in the classroom or at home. The focus for the 2021 school year is centered around 3 components: learn it, practice, and evidence of learning. Secondary instruction highlights the professional learning teachers are implementing with the Canvas learning management system and their continued development in the modern teacher environments. The curriculum facilitators are collecting resources for asynchronous students, and the resources will be aligned to the units of study in Edgenuity and provide additional support. We had a very long meeting and we adjourned at 2:20 because we had a lot of information to catch up on. And our next meeting will be scheduled for November 9th at 12 o'clock here in the boardroom.
Thank you, Ms. Cherry.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Ms. Guthrie.
may I make remarks?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to thank Ms. Cherry for presenting that report. As she stated, we did have a very long meeting, but we all know that the methodology for teaching and learning changed tremendously since March. We heard some awesome presentations, and we know that through the pandemic, we have some wonderful educators, support personnel, leaders, principals, again, our awesome teachers, and our parents are all working together to make the very best of the situation that we're in right now. It was a phenomenal meeting, wonderful presentations, and again, I want to thank the teachers, the principals, the parents, and most of all, our wonderful students, because they are learning in ways that they didn't expect to this time last year. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Guthrie. Our next item on the agenda is beginning teacher support program plan, and this is an action item. We have Ms. Risa Hull.
Good evening, Chairman Moore, Vice Chairman Collier, members of the board, Superintendent Booker. It's my pleasure to share information about the Beginning Teacher Support Program plan with you tonight. You will remember that the Beginning Teacher Support Program is a state-required 3-year induction program for beginning teachers. It is designed to help new teachers become successful educators, meet professional teaching standards, impact the learning of students, and to help beginning teachers remain in the profession. At this time, we have 125 BT1s who are supported through TIPS 1. This begins with support through human resources as new hires, and then ongoing curriculum and classroom support by the academic facilitators and the curriculum facilitators from the Academic Services Department. We currently have 112 BT2s and 115 BT3s. These BT2s and 3s receive support through TIPS 2 and TIPS 3 with me and with input from academic services and other district support program and staff. The Beginning Teacher Support Program is part of the state-required BTSP plan that's based on State Board Policy TCED 016. In our district, we meet these state policy requirements through Human Resources Department support and TIPS, the Teacher Induction Program for Success. This plan is updated when needed and brought to our board for approval and then submitted to the state. This year, there was one required change from DPI in regards to an amendment to TCED 016. This change notes that beginning teachers who completed an educator prep program and their principals must complete a survey at the end of the beginning teacher's first year. These state surveys are conducted in order to assist with measuring educator preparation program performance. In addition to the state-required change, we made a few other minor terminology changes in regard to position titles, such as adding academic facilitators to the team members who provide support for our beginning teachers. Our plan contains these required components: a documented process for identifying beginning teachers, an implementation of a sound induction process, a formal process for conducting observations and evaluations. The plan also contains a plan for participation in the Beginning Teacher Support Program monitoring and peer review with another LEA. We have a process for the storage of our beginning teacher files and a plan for the transfer of beginning teacher files to other LEAs and charters as needed. Upon initial review by our regional education facilitator, this proposed plan, with the changes I've reviewed with you this evening, includes all the state requirements. So at this time, we are seeking your approval of the 2020 Beginning Teacher Support Program Plan. And as always, I appreciate the opportunity to provide this information, and I thank you for your time this evening.
Second.
All right. First, Mr. Ramsey, second, Mr. Devon. Any questions, discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to ask Mrs. Hall, due to the pandemic, have you discovered any major concerns that our BT1 teachers are having, or the lack of support that they may not be getting due to everyone having to change the mindset for classroom learning?
Well, they've definitely made a great adjustment. So we have all of the TIPS meetings this year have all been virtual. And of course, we did that some in the spring. but our TIPS committee members have done a fantastic job of being available not only for their regularly scheduled TIPS meetings, but also just available to teachers anytime they have problems. I really do think that we've created a culture of family with our beginning teachers, and they feel very much at ease to ask for help when they need it. Their mentors were assigned early, and of course, teachers who are at the GVA have mentors as well. So everybody everywhere has that mentor support that we expect and that we've become accustomed to in our county. So I think that while they may have had some difficulties just in switching, they certainly have been great to reach out, and we've had lots of people on board to support and to help them.
Well, I don't imagine that technology would have been much of a problem for the beginning teachers. They already have experience there. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am. And if you ask them, when I have my meetings, they often help me through the technology. So it's been a great opportunity for me to learn as well.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, we have a first and a second. All in favor? And it's unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Hull.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is Beginning Teacher Support Program. Oh, I'm sorry. School Improvement Plan. This is the information item. Ms. Rebecca Powers.
Good evening, Chairman Moore, Vice Chairman Collier, members of the board, Superintendent Booker. Tonight, I'm sharing with you information about the School Improvement Plan process for the 2020-2021 school year. It is a requirement of the state of North Carolina that all schools create a school improvement plan and use this plan as a tool to drive school improvement over the course of a 2-year time period. The law specifies that each school shall develop a school improvement plan that considers the goals set out in the mission statement for the public schools adopted by the State Board of Education and the annual performance goals for that school as established by the State Board of Education. Annual performance goals must include a focus on student performance in reading, math, and communication skills in elementary and middle schools, include student performance in courses required for graduation and on other measures in high schools, and hold schools accountable for educational growth of their students. All plans on a 2-year cycle, with the new cycle beginning this school year. The school improvement plan for Gaston County schools have been developed and aligned to the requirements of the following documents and sources: the North Carolina State Strategic Plan, our Gaston County School Strategic Plan, North Carolina's Accountability Model, Title I required components of the school-wide programs, and our Advanced Ed School and District Accreditation Standards. IndaStar is the platform that the state uses to support our school improvement planning. In the state of North Carolina, we refer to IndaStar as NC Star. They are one and the same. In the past, our low-performing schools have been required by the state to submit their school improvement plan to the state using the NC Star platform. NC Star is highly effective in helping schools create and monitor their plans throughout the school year. This platform provides a way for schools to upload meeting agendas and minutes, as well as set goals, add strategies and actions throughout the improvement process, and to receive feedback from their executive directors. All schools are required to have 3 improvement goals. These improvement goals are to focus on improving student proficiency in the areas of reading, math, and science for elementary and middle grade levels. For high school, important improvement goals are to focus on English 2, Math 1, Math 3, and biology. As a part of the NC Star School Improvement Planning Tool, schools are required to focus on key indicators that become strategies in their buildings that lead to a school improvement. In NC Star, there are 125 indicators that schools may focus on. However, our district has selected 4 common indicators that all 55 schools would focus on and work towards implementing within their school improvement plan. Schools are able to select more indicators from the 125 in addition to the 4 common indicators that support their improvement efforts. The 4 common indicators are the following. All schools will focus on and implement tiered instructional practices. This would include our MTSS, multi-tiered system of support process that we currently implement at each school. All schools will focus on and implement actions that reduce student discipline and increase safety. This would include our PBIS, which is positive behavior support, interventions, and support programs that we have implemented within our schools. All schools will focus on and implement professional development opportunities based on information gathered through assessment and walkthrough data. And all schools will focus on and implement actions that increase parent involvement. Principals and their SIT teams are required to review their school improvement plan at each monthly meeting and document their action steps that they have completed in implementing each indicator, as well as address new action that needs to be taken. One of the greatest benefits of moving to NC STAR as a district is that we have access to school improvement plans at all times. Executive directors, along with other district leaders, are able to review these plans and see the additions that schools are making and provide feedback on actions that have been implemented and that are still in the planning stages. This feedback tool allows our schools an opportunity to change their plan based on the feedback given and to provide an open communication that is focused on school improvement. Also, stakeholders such as our parents and community members can log into NC STAR with a guest login that allows them to review the school improvement plan at any time. Tonight, I've provided Ms. Rizzaluato a list of the guest usernames and passwords for your review. Thank you, Chairman Moore. That's all I have.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Ms. Guthrie?
Ms. Powell, what did you say about your last sentence? Tonight I have what?
I have shared the guest logins and usernames and passwords with Ms. Rizzaluato that you all can use to log into the NC STAR system and review those school improvement plans.
Excellent, excellent. That was what I was going to say. I would like to be able to see or to review some of the plans.
Yes,
Great.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Turn your microphone on, Ms. Cherry.
Ms. Powers, how long have we been using NC STAR?
We have been using NC STAR since the 2018 school year.
2018?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So we would be able to compare the data that's already there to what we would be looking at for the new improvement 2021.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Go
It
ahead.
is a running, so that the NC STAR system is really nice that we don't take away any of the information. So everything that schools have been placing in there since 2018 is a long list. So you should be able to see as it is adding on top of each other. So it shows their list of plan year by year. So their action steps are building one on top of another. So it has their action steps from 2018 all through this year.
So were the plans made after the assessment this year?
We did not have any EOG assessments this year, so our goals pretty much stayed stagnant for the 2020-21 school year. So our schools were given guidance to extend those out through the end of the 2021 school year.
Okay, thank
However,
you.
we're using other data pieces to help them develop those goals.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, I would add that those plans for each respective school, you can access them through their website for the general public. The board's just given the ability to go in and see multiple schools at one time with their passwords.
All right, thank you. Our next item on the agenda is school improvement plans for low-performing schools. This is an information item, and also Ms. Rebecca Powers.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Moore. Tonight, I will be sharing information with you about the low-performing schools process for the 2021 school year. Usually in September of each year, the State Board of Education will release the low-performing schools for the previous school year. Low-performing schools are identified as schools that receive a performance grade of D or F and have a school growth score of met or not met expected growth. However, due to COVID-19, Gaston County Schools, like all of North Carolina's public schools, requested and did receive a waiver from the U.S. Department of Education for the 2019-2020 school year. Therefore, all of our low-performing schools designations will remain the same for the 2021 school year. In a low-performing school, schools are required to submit a school improvement plan using the NC STAR platform. Out of the 125 indicators in the system, these schools are required to focus on 12 key indicators. The 4 indicators that all of our schools are focusing on this year are part of those 12 key indicators that our low-performing schools will be focused on. The executive directors, along with the accountability department, have worked with our low-performing schools on writing their plans. In 2014-15, the state of North Carolina began identifying low-performing schools. In the first year of identification, Gaston County Schools had 13 schools identified as low-performing, and for the 2020-2021 school year, we will have 11 low-performing schools. Our low-performing schools are listed here. The state of North Carolina does have a timeline that they provide us for each step of the low-performing school improvement process. On September 17th, we met with the principals of the identified schools, and principals have continued to work on their school improvement plans and updating their goals and action steps. And now that the plans have been created, you as the local board are given time to review these plans and provide any feedback to us. 30 days after the plans are reviewed, the local board will vote on the approval of these plans. This vote will occur at our November 16th meeting. After the plans are approved by the local Board of Education, the district has 5 days to submit these plans to the state through the NC STAR platform. Tonight, we have provided you a list of those guest username and logins so that you as the board can review those school improvement plans. Thank you, Chairman Moore. That is all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Powers. If we got any questions? Ms. Cherry?
Ms. Powers, who determined the, was there a group that determined the 12 action steps that you were going to, or items? I can't remember the specific
They were
word
key
that you
indicators.
used. The indicators. Thank you, Ms. Guthrie. The indicators. Was there a specific group, or was it the principals at the schools, or?
The state, the Department of Public Instruction gives us guidance.
Then we picked how many out of those?
We have, low-performing schools have to use the 12 indicators that
Okay.
are given to us by the state.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else? Ms. Guthrie?
So, the elementary schools, do they collaborate together, or do they look at their individual environments and test scores or assessment and then develop their strategies from what they have? Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. It's a little bit of mixture of both. So our schools collaborate together in the planning process. They share out what they're using, what action steps they're taking, what strategies they have developed within their school to help their fellow colleagues of what may work in their building. But they also use their own individual schools' data to help drive their planning and their strategies and goal setting. Yes, ma'am. And we work along with them during principals meetings to share that information with them. And we work very closely as the accountability department with our executive directors to make sure our principals have that vital information in their hands.
Do they ever collaborate with other schools who are the A or B schools to find out some best practices or strategies that could work?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, considering modifying them to meet their needs.
Yes, ma'am. And we, in principals meetings, it's a little bit different times, but usually in a principals meeting during this time of sharing out assessment data and doing school improvement planning, you would see our principals at a table together, a mixture of our A through D performance grade schools, and they're sharing out ideas, collaborating together, sharing their data. It's very transparent in how they're using that information to drive school improvement and sharing out. We also have principals who share their best practices with other principals. Yes, ma'am.
Great. Thank you.
Ms. Guthrie, also as part of the process, each of the low-performing schools has a meeting with the superintendent and the executive director to
Yeah.
review their goals, and we do those meetings quarterly for progress monitoring in addition to what the state requires.
So do you ever see a need for additional staff in order for the principals to fulfill or to meet the goals? Or do you think you have adequate staff? You just need maybe more tutors? Is that something that could help, especially with literacy and working one-on-one or, with assistants helping in the classroom? And the way that we're doing remote and in-person learning now, do you think that we would need tutors to help with online learning?
Tutors are one of the strategies that the schools utilize. Another fortune, if you look closely to the list, they are Title I schools, which gives them some additional flexibility with funding and resources. So that has been beneficial as well.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, thank you, Ms. Powers. Our next item on the agenda is the high school exam schedule, fall 2021. Traditional high schools and Gaston Early College, and this is an action item. We have Dr. Christy Bostic.
Good evening, Chairman Moore, Vice Chairman Collier, members of the board, and Superintendent Booker. Tonight I bring you the fall exam schedule for action. The Department of Public Instruction has once again designated the last 5 days of in-person instruction of this semester for final exams. As you are aware, this semester, some of our students are learning in person while others are learning virtually. DPI has provided guidance that all students taking a state exam must take that test in person. The state exams at the high school level include the end of course test for Math 1, Math 3, Biology, English 2, and several of our CTE courses. In order for students to take the state exams, they must access an NC test application, but that can only be accessed while they are in our buildings. In an effort to meet this requirement and maintain proper social distancing in our buildings, we are proposing that only students needing to take one of these state exams take their tests in our buildings, while any students taking a locally made, teacher-made exam take that exam remotely. As you can see from this exam schedule before you, it looks very similar to how it has looked previous years, where we still propose that on the first day of exams, which would be Monday, December the 14th, that would be first period exams, but it would only be for any student taking a required career and technical education state exam or one of those end of course courses that I mentioned that they have during first period. Any student taking a teacher-made exam could take it at some point during that day, but they would take it from home. And then the same thing happening on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for second, third, and fourth periods. And then Friday would be our makeup day to ensure that we were able to test everyone we needed to. Also, I'd like to point out that this exam schedule, we only have one this year because the early college and our traditional high school schedules match up, their calendars match, and therefore they will be giving exams at the same time this year. Are there any questions about the exam schedule?
Mr. Davis.
So just so that everybody is clear, the students will be deviating from their regular cohort A, B in order to meet this exam schedule. Is that correct?
That is, yes, that is correct. We would need to do that in order to meet and be able to, once the state designated that it would still be only the last 5 days of in-person instruction that they would allow for the exams, that caused us to have to deviate and go back to the typical Monday through Thursday exam schedule and not keeping those AB cohorts.
Okay.
But hopefully by only having the students that are taking a state exam in the building, that would allow us to have very small test sessions, and be able to use all of our staff to do all of those smaller test sessions to keep students distanced, as well as doing any accommodation groups that we would need to do.
And our adoption of this tonight will allow our folks plenty of time and opportunity to make sure that all of our parents and families and students know what their schedule is going to be. That way they can make appropriate plans to be in school when they need to be in school. So Thank you for
Correct.
having this ready for us here tonight. We appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
And I would add, Mr. Davis, we are required by general statute to do it in the last week of the semester.
Any other questions, comments?
So does this includes everyone, virtual and all, right? They got to come in and take the
Yes,
test.
sir. Even the virtual students would have to come take these exams in person.
Okay, thanks.
And Mr. Hall, that is a question that has been raised at the state level. It has to do with validating the test. If they were to allow this test to be spread, then it would invalidate them using them for future years because of the security measures that are required.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Devon, second. Mr. Davis. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And it's unanimous. Thank you, Dr. Bostic.
Thank you all.
Our next item on the agenda is COVID-19 response for employees and students. This is an information item, and we have Dr. Booker.
Good evening, everyone, and I appreciate the time tonight to go through this. But before I start, I want to make sure that we thank a large group of people. One, our parents, and all the support the community has given us. This has been a difficult opening of schools and a difficult 2 months, but through it all, they have supported us and been very understanding and worked with us to get us to this point. And to us as a group of folks that some of you have already highlighted in our resolution with our principals and then our teaching faculty, they have gone above and beyond. And I think the speaker from the NCAE tonight, she summed up really well. Their passion and commitment for what they do has been evident, and their ability to say can do and to work through a lot of these challenges is much appreciated. One of the things that we have worked really hard on is working with health professionals. This includes Caramont and other medical professionals in our community, but most importantly, our partnership with Health and Human Services. And as we said last month, this was a partnership that's been going on for a long time. Many of you have served on the SHAC committee and different things in your careers as board members. But I would say that over the last 6 months, this partnership has proved invaluable because having relationships before this began has really supported us from how we did graduation all the way to how we're operating our schools now. And so ask Mr. Eaton if he wouldn't mind joining us again to give his perspective on how our community is doing so you could hear it firsthand. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Eaton. Steve?
Great, thank you. Good evening, Chairman Moore, member of the school board, and Superintendent Booker. Thank you again for having me. Again, my name's Steve Eaton. I'm the Public Health Director for the Gaston County Department of Health and Human Services. If we could pull up the presentation. Great, thank you. Tonight I want to just present to you all data as it pertains to the school age population as well as faculty. These numbers that you're going to see tonight represent all schools in Gaston County, including public, charter, and private. So we don't have the ability within our organization to break it out into various school systems. So this is a combination of all school age-related data. And we look at this data from a number of different viewpoints. One, the total number of cases, the total number tested, and a percent positive in relation to the total number of tested, also known as the positivity rate. With that said, as Superintendent Booker stated, public health in Gaston County school leadership work very closely and collaboratively daily and oftentimes on weekends on areas such as prevention, contact tracing, contact investigations. This is a unified all hands on deck approach between the two organizations that has proven over and over again to be invaluable in curbing the spread within the school. It's also important to note, and something that we've been highlighting within the community, and you may already be aware of, but our local and state numbers and trends are heading in the wrong direction. We're now seeing a daily surge in new cases, double where they were weeks ago. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, we were seeing about 30 to 40 cases a day. We're now seeing well over 100 cases per day, as well as our positivity rate had been leveled at about 7.6%, and now we're approaching 10% just over this last week. And the number of those hospitalized due to COVID has tripled over the last month, with numbers now approaching 70 in the hospital. So what I wanted to do is first start looking at all cases with regards to faculty, staff, and students. Starting on August 16th, we saw an increase in the number of cases among faculty and staff and students. And then we saw kind of a leveling, as you'll see, throughout September. We're now seeing an increase exceeding those from the mid-August numbers. And we expect these numbers to increase the rest of this month as cases get reported and then logged into the system. So these numbers that you see are based on when based on the specimen collection date. Then once those are reported to us, we log them into the system. So there's a little lag time, and that's why you'll see that last column low. We expect that to go up. And just as an example, just over this weekend, we had 250 positive new cases. And now that we're averaging another 100 and plus cases per day, we are now in the process of sorting through those based on age and other demographics. So again, that we anticipate that column to increase. When you look at the percent positive for ages 5 to 11, when looking at this data, the red bar that you'll see is representative of the total positive, and the blue bar is based on the total number tested. So as you can see with the ages 5 to 11, testing has increased in this population since late September, as has the percent positive, and with more results coming in as tests come into us. Similarly to the age 5 to 11 population, we're seeing an increase in the positivity rate of the 12 to 18-year-olds. I do want to highlight, if you look at that far left column, that positivity rate, you'll see it 21.66%. That appears to be an outlier in that we believe that some of those numbers captured there are college students that are 18. So if you think back, we remember during this time frame, there was an outbreak at Belmont Abbey, for example. So many of those that are captured were 18. So that's several of those we can attribute to college students as part of that cohort. With regards to the progression of age ranges, this slide shows the progression of positives across age strata beginning when the pandemic occurred. You'll note that the small percent in the 0-18 strata that vary, for example, in March it was 2.27%, has been increasing over time. We've also noted that over the time of the pandemic, those demographics of those testing positive have begun to reflect the breakdown of the community demographics, which basically highlights for us in public health the broad-based spread of the virus within the community. It's now not in certain demographics, although certain populations are more disproportionately impacted, but over time we're seeing it become more reflective of our community demographics, which shows that spread. So now let's look at the number of positive students and the number of students who've been identified as a contact to a positive. These contacts include those, basically the vast majority of those contacts or those and positives have occurred outside the school setting. We've seen an increase in both positives and those deemed contacts. Why I kind of wanted to point this out is something that we've been highlighting to people is the impact this has on family economics. So for example, when a child tests positive and let's say they come home, then everybody in that home becomes a contact to that positive case. So that child will obviously have to isolate for a minimum of 10 days. But then everybody within that home has to quarantine for 14 days. So basically that's family members who are unable to work for 14 days. If on that 13th day of quarantine, that person becomes positive, they then have to self-isolate for another 10 days. So what we're seeing is that this can, again, disproportionately impact those working families who need that income and are unable to go to work due to either quarantining or isolation. Let's see. It's also important to note, again, based on the great work of the school personnel and contact tracing, that I just want to highlight again, nearly all the spread that we've seen has occurred outside of school at this point. And that, again, is of great credit to the school staff and the mitigation strategies that are in place that have been working in keeping the spread from occurring within the school. So again, can't say enough for the staff and the protocols that are in place that have, to this point, been able to mitigate that spread. With regards to faculty and staff, we've also seen an increase in the number of positives among faculty and staff. This, again, is important to note when it comes to, again, isolation and quarantine. When a teacher or staff member tests positive, they're going to need to isolate at home for a minimum of 10 days. And those who are deemed close contacts of a positive case, so maybe a fellow teacher or a teacher assistant, et cetera, they then will have to quarantine for 14 days due to the incubation period for COVID-19, which is 14 days. And again, back to my previous point, if they would then become positive, it'd be isolation for additional 10 days. And then lastly, this is something that we began looking at today, and these do reflect just Gaston County public school personnel. With regards to hospitalization, you'll see that in August there was one staff person hospitalized. In September there was 4, and October there's been 5. And this again is based on local tracking of these totals as of this afternoon. So thank you for your time, and that concludes the end of my report.
Thank you, Stephen. Again, thank you for all the work that your organization is doing on our behalf and the community's behalf. As we look at our work as the Gaston County Schools, go back to what we said before. We're in uncharted territory, but through this we're trying to engage all of our stakeholders because this school year continues to be extremely different. For our guidance, we have been given the North Carolina's guidance on reopening schools, and then the public health toolkit, which you can see here was last updated October 12th. So they are continually giving additional guidance to further clarify or to amend some things that they have previously described. Our goals always have been to have a plan that is in the best interest of all of our schools, with a safe environment for our students and our employees. As I believe Mr. Davis pointed out earlier, we were one of the 2 large districts in the state that went with Plan B, and this took a lot of commitment on our faculty and our school leadership to do that, and so we have continued to operate that. With the recent adjustment by the governor for Plan A, you can see here that this is what was put into the toolkit, that starting on October 5th, schools may choose to operate in Plan A. It was not a mandate that you were to have to go into Plan A, but it was an option for kindergarten through 5th grade students. All the other restrictions stayed in place. It just said that you may do this and acknowledge that with younger children, they felt you could get away with minimal social distancing. We currently are still operating under what was approved originally, which is the model with the A group and the B group, with A group coming on Monday and Tuesday, learning remotely 3 days, and then B group, we're learning the first 3 days remotely and coming to school Thursday and Friday. And then those who chose virtual instruction are 5 days of remote. Through it all, safe buildings, safe classrooms, safe activities. You all have heard folks passionately speak about some of the activities they would like to see us adding to our schools. We are working, in fact, today with Mr. Eaton's team, we were reviewing additional information related to some of the arts and implementing those. So we are still moving forward to try and do that. We have sports that are beginning in November as far as with the State Athletic Association, but none of what you would expect. Most of it is all pushed into January, February for further clarification. And in recent meetings with the High School Athletic Association, they're waiting for the next move from the governor before they'll provide clarification as far as who can attend games and those things. But we will begin several sports in the first week in November as far as practicing. These focus areas are the same, and people continue to work on those. You know, I would highlight for you school nutrition, because you've seen a lot of activity in that. And I know in the operations meeting, you heard some discussion about school nutrition. We were given a federal relaxation of requirements that allowed us to extend the summer feeding program, which allows us to feed a wider number of people, and a lot of the documentation that is typically required was relaxed. That authorization was set to expire August 31st. We began putting all the protocols in place to transition into the traditional funding, and on August 31st, the government did inform us that we could extend that program through the end of the year. And fortunately, we've been given further notification we now can extend it through the end of our school calendar year, not just the December, but through June. With that, our school nutrition has continued to work diligently because they're trying to adapt to how do we feed kids. If children aren't in school 3 days a week, how do we make sure they're getting their meals for those? How do we meet our virtual kids and what they need? So they've identified communities where low volume was being delivered through the school, and they're actually taking meals into those communities and distributing them. They've come up with a grab bag that they can distribute on the second day of attendance so that students may take that for 3 days. Very aggressive in trying to do those things, and we commend all the work. Our school nutrition workers are truly frontline folks that have been there through all this from beginning in March. But you could go through each of these areas and see where similar things are going on in our focus areas. HR has had an incredible amount of work to do. This is just some of the guidance they've had to provide for employees about what happens with COVID. You see chart A, chart B, chart C, and then further guidance for that, and working and trying to just manage what COVID looks like in Gaston County. And I'll just say, just to pause for a moment, we have right at 4,000 employees. We have had more than 400 employees have to use the Federal Leave Act related to COVID. So 10% of our employees from August 10th to here have had to use some form of the COVID relief related to where they've had either an exposure, contact, or they suffered from COVID. The governor moved through executive order 2.5 from 2. We opened under 2. He moved to 2.5. The big difference for school systems was playgrounds were allowed to open. Officially, we still have to do some masking because of close contact, but we are allowed to use the playgrounds. He then moved to phase 3, which is through October 23rd. And in that one, there were no direct impacts to school operations, but the large outdoor venues and mass gatherings and the interpretations that come with that would lead to eventually the gatherings that we would have related to various school events. You know, Mr. Eaton's giving you a bunch of statistics. I had prepared this and just wanted to share. When we talked back in August, at that time through June 30th, 1,000 cases. Now, as we sit here on October 12th, almost 6,000 cases, and based on what he has shared, it'll exceed that. And then this dashboard comes right off of the Gaston County page, and it showed, again, what he was talking about. We saw operations begin. We saw a steady, but through middle of September and now into October, we're seeing an increase. And this increase in the community is felt in your schools. As we've said, we are the community. We're the second largest employer. We have 30,000 students. So as goes the community, that's what goes on in Gaston County Schools. But through this, we continue to evolve to meet those needs. These pictures show great things going on in a classroom, and also visited a school where the media specialist and librarian has developed a process where kids say, these are the books I want, and you see Uber Reads, they deliver the books to it. Creative things going on in our schools to adapt to the new way of operation. Stakeholder input and feedback is always vital to us, and We work hard to get it. I want to thank our parent advisory councils. We had a meeting with just the elementary and then a meeting with the middle and high. We had a meeting with NCAE. We enjoy a positive relationship where we can talk. So I asked if they could put together a panel of elementary teachers. So I was able to meet with those folks and talk about their input. We met not only with our principals, we're meeting with them weekly, but we had an extended meeting with our elementary principals. Also was able to get out and meet individually with some of our elementary principals. And we had a meeting with district leadership. And in that, we focused on three things. We said, what's going well with Plan B? And then we said, why do you think it's gone well? And then what concerns did you have or ongoing with it? And it was really interesting, some of the comments we got. You know, a parent talked about things have gone well. School as a whole and teachers seem very organized and communicate often. Children seem happy to be back at school and have adapted well. This parent was honest. You know, I'm struggling with the mom teacher role. I was not trained as a teacher and I don't have those techniques needed to assist them with them learning. And that's, I think, a common thing that we'll see. And many of you have commented, this shows the value of a teacher that cannot be replaced by any machine. And that our community is appreciating what they do. We were featured in an article WFAE did with Andos Helms talking about the work. And some of the interviews of our parents, bus drivers, just showed the passion of folks for Gaston County Schools and what goes on. We had comment from school administrators. You know, we are ready for in-person instruction. In one of my face-to-face meetings, one-on-one, principal said, my teachers want their kids back right now, every day. The question is, how can we make it work and maintain social distancing? And that's part of, if you look at Manny Cohen's interview with NCAE, she talks about protocols will be different from school to school, from district to district, because the buildings are different. Things operate differently. We have done an analysis of our schools and just looked at enrollments and how many kids are in A day and how many kids are in B day and combining those. And in some places you could do it in social distancing, but in other, as you see this NCAE comment, if you combine me, I would have 26 kids in my classroom and there would be little to no distancing. So a lot of comments and supported that what we're doing and they're appreciative of it. Another thing to share with you is just what does a COVID event look like in our school system? So this is a hypothetical. This is taking 2 or 3 of ours and just blending them together, but you could pull and see this is fairly common, and it'll show you the complexity of what one event can do. So Jane is a student at Little River High School. She's in a community event and gets exposed and tests positive. Well, Kathy, who's also a student at the school, rode to school with Jane, and then Kathy will later test positive. Kathy's mother is Debbie. She's a teacher at the middle school. She now has to quarantine. So at a community event, exposed a student at the high school, so now we've got it in our middle school. 2 schools have been impacted. From that, Donnie, who is Debbie's son and Kathy's brother, attends Little River Elementary, and he will have to quarantine because of the exposure with his sister. And you see the lines coming off of that. It could continue and continue. Oh, but it's not over because Donnie is picked up by a relative, Susan, from school, who takes him home and babysits him. So now Susan becomes a close contact, and she has to be evaluated in her contacts. But back up here, Jane and Kathy spent time together at Kathy's house, and we could start that whole process of what happened at the house and what exposures. But at the same time, another person rode to school with Jane, Nathan, and he tested positive 1 day later. Well, his father is a teacher at Logan Middle School. So now we have 2 middle schools affected and a high school and an elementary school. Oh, but it gets better. He's a coach in the youth sports in town, which means Sean, who coaches with him, not an employee of Gaston County or of the school system, but coaches, he's now become a close contact, and that begins the tracing. And this is how one positive test can ripple through, and you see in this instance, it's impacted an elementary school, 2 middle schools. It's taken faculty out of those schools. It's taken students out, and this is the world we're living in that we operate every day. And that's where Ms. Worthy and Mr. Clinton spend a lot of their time working with Mr. Eaton's team to determine this. And this is, when you see these things about quarantining, these are dictation things that come to us in working with the health department and the recommendations of what they do. And Mr. Eaton talked about the social and economic impact of these. You know, we have had situations where we've had employees out for almost an entire month because of the way the quarantining and contact tracing can work. So when you look back, we talked when we first made the decision to operate in Plan B that this is all a continuum of risk. And that's part of what Mr. Eaton and his team are very good at working with us and saying this is all a manner of managing risk. And we knew the lowest risk would be to stay virtual. Then we'd move into some form of small in-person classes that would have more risk, but it would bring benefit. And then obviously, if we went back to normal size classes, we would have increased risk. This diagram was part of a group we're in with Duke University, where they're studying, and they shared this and talked about each of your different methods that you're doing for intervention are like putting together a defense. And it's all got, each of them has a hole in them, but when you combine them, you start plugging the holes. And you see there, physical distancing is one that they rate very highly, along with mask, hand washing, testing, contact tracing, surface cleaning. So all those together provide you clear protection. For us, when you talk about looking at Plan B versus Plan A, currently in Plan B, buses have 1 child per seat, and then all these protocols are done between runs, things, but kids are social distance, they're wearing masks. When you look at Plan A, for K-5, if you are able to put only K-5 on a student's bus, that's it, you're given flexibility in how you operate. But then you see how the guidance goes, it touches that, but it spends more time talking about strongly encouraged to stay under B, strongly encouraged to operate as you have been, and talks about all that you should know more than, do no more. So they're fairly restrictive on how they want you to operate from a transportation. For clarification, I wanted to just take a little bit of time and walk you through some classroom examples. So this is a pre-COVID classroom, and you look there in the center, you'll see that light up, those are 5 desks there. So we have 5 groups of 5, so there's 25 seats there. And in the lower left-hand corner, you see a breakout where small groups could be done. So in theory, you could get up to 29 students in that room if it was fully loaded. But this is pre-COVID. And so those circles represent the 6 feet distancing. This next chart will show you this, you see the over on the right, the legend about the intensity of social distancing and what it would be. There was none. No one thought about this as we were operating our schools last fall. And so the class would be fully loaded. So today, that classroom looks like this. You have 12 seats in there, and the students are spread out in various configurations. And when you go to look at the social distancing and the overlay of what that impact is, you see where there's ample social distancing and there's spacing, and it allows for movement and safety. And the teaching wall has its own space reserved for the teacher in their own gap. So as you start thinking about layouts moving forward, this shows if you brought 19 students back. So think about if we merged 2 cohort A and cohort B together, you would start looking at these. And you see those 3 on the outer wall are really against the wall. So it really gets back to pushing 16 there. But you see with the social distancing, while they've maintained it, any movement would cause some kind of penetration to that. And that's what this one just shows you, the same intensity map. Now, many of you know that we operate our schools with tables. And so this shows a layout where you have 20 seats at tables, and then you have 2 breakout areas with 4 potential students each. So this, on a high side, could be 28 students in there. And this is a very advantageous classroom establishment that you would see a lot throughout our grade levels, but particularly in upper grades. Look at the heat intensity as far as social distancing. Again, no one's concerned about that in the past, so we operated and everything was great. So this room now converted into a COVID classroom. Remember how many students we had? We had 20 seats. Now you're down to 10 seats. And then the breakouts go from 4 to 1. So you see the shift in the change that works, but we're able to create the social distancing and have our faculty able to work with the students. Finally, taking a room and putting 22 students in it, and you remember the NCAE comment about 26 would be in my classroom, and then you look at and trying to spread it out if it were done in the traditional way. So I just do this to show you, because there was a lot of folks saying, do you have a plan? Folks, we have plans. Our folks, our schools know how to operate in Plan A. They know how to do that well. What they struggle with is, how do we maintain social distancing? How do we even look at revised social distancing? There are those who will say, oh, the WHO says that you can do it 3 feet social distancing. Well, I show you these diagrams to show you the challenge that 3 feet would present for our folks. And while we do have some rooms that could adapt, not all rooms could adapt. And so the minimal social distancing becomes a challenge. And when you combine that with where we are in our community and what is going on, you just go back to that original thing. And it talks about lower risk, moderate risk, and high risk. When you overlay and say this is what Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C look like, we're in a moderate risk in a community that currently is challenged by what's going on in COVID. And so we talked about, health and safety procedures. And these procedures, social distancing, face coverings, health questionnaires, temperature checks, frequent hand washing, hygiene, moving through all the planning that's gone on in the bus transportation and school and the communication, all that combined together says at this time we are operating in a positive way. We are able to keep our students as safe as we can, following the protocols. We're in a good groove with the operation. Like any year, we have challenges. The speaker brought up a challenge. That's school. We have challenges. What we feel is the way we're operating now is a positive way for us to be operating. It is the way that we feel we can maintain, because when you think about currently having a school that is 100% virtual, based on that number of cases that we had there. We've had classrooms in several other schools. If we had not had the social distancing and operating the way we were, it would have been greater. And so there is no one that I have spoken with that doesn't want to be back the way it was last fall. But they also want to be safe. And I'm sorry, but when Mr. Eaton showed me that chart earlier today that we have 5 people in the hospital, that's very sobering for me. And so I believe that operating in B at this time is a positive thing for our community. We want to go to A, and our schools can go to A. They know how to do A, but we need to do it in a prudent way. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Booker. Mr. Devon?
I have one quick comment. I really appreciate Gaston County Schools, the transparency that we are showing and our inclusive partnership with our health department and Mr. Eaton. I mean, that really tonight brought everything together for me that, it takes more than just us doing it. And I really like the way our health department has jumped in there with us. So,
Mr. Denton, I will tell you that I am very proud of the relationship, what our school nurses do, what Ms. Worthy has done, Mr. Clinton and his folks, combined with what they're doing. It's great for the whole state to be held up and say that's the way it should be. And then I'll say that what we have tried to do on our website by publishing weekly our results and letting people know we are trying to inform but still respect the privacy people are due when there is a case.
One quick question. Mr. Reed's still there, probably not. You had 1 in August in the hospital, 4 in October, and 4 in September, and 5 in October. They're all different people?
Yes, sir. They're all, those are all different instances, yes, sir.
Mr. Collier?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to tag on a little bit to what Mr. Dedman says. Transparency, I again, like Mr. Dedman, applaud what we're doing, but it comes with a double-edged sword because we want our parents and we want all our stakeholders to know, and we want to be transparent to them, but media takes that information and doesn't put us in the best light sometimes. I noticed on the TV news that we're up there. I see Gaston County Schools. I don't really see anybody else or any charter schools or private schools named, and we know they have their problems, but that's the only double-edged sword about transparency is we get a bad rep in the media because they're going to plaster that everywhere when we report it. But I think it's absolutely necessary, and the downside of that, I think we do have to continue to be transparent to our stakeholders and share teachers, staff, and everyone. As far as going to Plan A, you know, I think I'm in agreement with everybody that we need in-person instruction. I truly believe that our children are suffering and falling behind, especially in our elementary levels. I do believe that. However, with this resurgence of positive tests and hospitalizations, it's something we can't put our foot on the gas and rush into. And this is something we're just going to have to be very cautious, and the environment's just going to have to get better with this. The health experts predicted this and said this is coming, and it looks like it's come to fruition what they predicted. So with that, as much as I want in-person instruction, I think we've heard our teachers say that too. To do it in social distance and do it safely is something we're just going to have to pause until there's something drastically changes in the direction of our this COVID-19 virus. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Ramsey?
Yeah, I agree with Lee and Kevin's comments. We all here agree that in-class, especially K-5 right now, is the best for our children, and I know the parents want it also, but with this report, with the increase in the COVID, we probably need to, like Kevin said, probably pause for now, and Superintendent Dr. Booker realized we're ready to go, but as the health department, our partnerships, they're our guidance on this, and we want to stay with what the expert tells us.
Mr. Davis?
First of all, I want to thank Dr. Booker for a very thorough and detailed report, and thank you to Mr. Eaton for being with us again tonight. I think it's important for us to say and acknowledge that we're not health experts, but we have great partnership with health experts, and we're making our decisions about what we do based upon our consultation with the best folks we have at our disposal, and we've done that since the very beginning. We're not making our decisions based upon what we read and hear on the newspapers or on Fox News or on CNN or in politics. The decisions we're making are based upon the realities of what is happening in Gaston County. And we do want our kids back in school as quickly as we can get them all safely back in school. I've got 2 kids in the school system, and like many of our parents, I am seeing the challenges of whether you're virtual or whether your kids are hybrid. I see those challenges, but as we see what's going on in our county right now with increased incidences of COVID infection, with an increase in hospitalization, it would not be prudent at this point to go to Plan A. And as a matter of fact, I don't think any other of the 10 largest districts are able to do that right now either. Unless I am mistaken, I don't think I am I, Dr. Booker?
A couple are studying it in November, yes, sir.
And we are looking to do that and are ready to do that when our health experts tell us we can safely do it. And that's what's very, very important. We want our kids back in school. We want our teachers with our students. We don't want our parents to have to be teachers. But we also don't need to put our students and our faculty and our staff in a position where we're having to shut down entire schools for prolonged periods of time where nobody's able to go to school. And the reality is right now the trends have gone the wrong way, unfortunately. But the good thing is that we know that we're ready to move when the environment allows us to do so. And so really appreciate the work that Dr. Booker and his folks are doing to have us ready to do that when our situation improves.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Anyone else? Mr. Hall? Mr. Hall,
sir.
you're on mute, Mr. Hall.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
So the health department is taking the percentage of what they've tested and using the positive ones that's how they're getting a percentage, right? It's not the overall, like we got 224,000 people in Gaston County and 5,000 have tested positive, which would make it like 2%. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Are they on their percentages by what they've tested and what tested positive?
That's correct, sir. That's correct. So the positivity rate is based on total number tested or taking the total number positive divided by total number tested to determine the positivity rate of those who are both symptomatic and asymptomatic who have been tested.
So if you look at 224,005, you'd have like 2%, correct?
If you were looking at the total population.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Dr. Booker. Mr. Eaton, thank you for your insight. Our next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there many?
I'll second.
Mr. Devon, second. Mr. Collier, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And it's unanimous. This brings us to the time of the meeting to hear from our superintendent. Dr. Booker, do you have any comments?
Yes, sir. You've heard from me enough, except for a couple of things I want to remind folks. Next week will be, this Thursday, October 22nd, is the beginning of distribution of report cards for our first 9 weeks. So students in Cohort B will get them on Thursday. Students in Cohort A would receive them when return on Monday, but you can look online to see them prior to that if a parent would like to, from Thursday forward. Also, I want to remind everyone that November 3rd is Election Day, and on national elections, our calendar is built so that it's an optional teacher work day, so that it will be a remote learning day for our students, so that we can have our facilities vacant for the various places that are used as voting centers. Also, just to remind everyone that November 11th will be before our next meeting, and that's Veterans Day. And please thank someone who has served our country if you see them, and we will be closed for Veterans Day as well. And with all that calendar discussion, our calendar committee has held its first meeting and begun to look. I will remind the board that this year the legislature passed and moved your calendar, and you had to adjust everything to August 17th, but that was a one-time passage. It did not permanently move, so we'll be back on the previous rules and regulations, and that's part of what Mr. Clinton and his team did. They went through with all the principals to remind them of the various things we have to follow because of that. Mr. Moore? Yes, ma'am. Got a lot of interesting feedback on that, Ms. Cherry. Several teachers took the time to write nice notes saying that parents gave them positive feedback about the accessibility and that they felt comfortable in that environment And that, in fact, one teacher said, it's one of the first times I've had parents running over telling me and having other people waiting and having to say, I've got someone waiting. So there's a lot of excitement around that. I'm sure there were some glitches with people signing in and things, but overall I heard great.
Dr. Booker, you mind if I comment about that? Because I participated in a virtual conference, and I will tell you, Ms. Cherry, at the middle school level, I thought the virtual conference was great. My son's teachers were all three on the conference together at the same time, and we were able to have a fantastic discussion. It was different than if we had actually been at the middle school, where we would have moved from class to class to class. So it actually worked out very well with our conference. So I really appreciate what the teachers did. It was.
There are a lot of things that we think will be a bonus coming out of this, and that's one of them that might be. I know for our parent advisory, we got really positive feedback because you have a good 45-hour meeting. Nobody had to relocate. And so, yes, ma'am, I think there's some advantages to that. And finally, I would like to thank, we have Mr. Hovis with us. The commissioners invited us last week for the kickoff about the planning for future discussion and smart growth and some adjustments they're making in the overall planning process. And obviously, with 30,000 students, we're a big part of any planning for growth. And so Mr. Moore and I attended that, and we'll continue to work with Mr. Skiba and the other staff members at the county as they develop the future planning. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that's my comments. And while we had it on the agenda for a closed session, we do not need that, sir.
All right. Thank you for your time and attention as we work hard to do what's best for our students, teachers, and others. And we look forward to our next regular board meeting, which is scheduled for November the 16th. But one thing I'd like to say before we close out, I'd like to thank Dr. Booker for his hard work during this unprecedented time. I talk to Dr. Booker sometimes 5 or 6 times a day, and he hasn't taken a breath since February. So he was supposed to go on vacation, I believe it was in July, and I talked to him several times during that week. And I said, well, how was your vacation? He said, well, I think I made it in one picture. So he's been on the phone all during this whole time, and Zoom calls. I'll come by, and he'll have 3 or 4 Zoom calls going at a time. So I want to thank him for his leadership and what he's done, and as we move forward. And Mr. Devin?
Well, one quick thing. We all agree that all of our personnel, our school personnel, are very valuable, every one of them. Quick story. We are very fortunate to be able to have our granddaughter at our house on her virtual days. So today, she wanted to go to Miss Rosie's cafeteria, so Marilyn fixed the lunch up on the island, and her and I went through with our trays. We got our lunch, had to go around the island and sit back down. So our cafeteria workers, all those people, our kids miss so much in school, as Justin and everybody here has said. But we're doing the right thing, and we need to continue the right thing. And I'd like to make one further comment.
Yes, sir.
Move that we adjourn.
All right. We got a motion.
I'll second.
One thing, Mr. Hovis, would you like to say something?
If it's in order, Mr. Chair, we appreciate your attendance at our meeting the other week. The county has the responsibility of providing you the necessary funds for seats, whether virtual seats or whatever seats, but they're going to be seats. We're going to have kids. We're going to have growth. We're going to have changes. We don't want Gaston County to find themselves like Union County. That is my number one goal as county commissioner, should I get elected for another 4-year term, is to make sure that happens. We have to do that collaboratively with you folks, whether we're utilizing existing capacity in schools, that we have to change attendance lines to make that work. That's one of those options. That's not our palatable option. We'd like to do that in a fashion where we keep children in their neighborhood schools, because Gaston County has made a commitment for that. You folks have, and we have as well. With that being said, what you folks are doing is you're trying to mitigate risk, and you're doing a phenomenal job at doing that with my grandchildren and other parents' children. A lot of people would like to have everything to twitch their nose and the world become back to normal. We're not fortunate enough to be in a position to do that today with the numbers that Mr. Eaton has expressed to you, with numbers that we see as county commissioners. But we've got to try to keep moving forward. You're doing a great job at that. I want you, the Board of Education, to continue to make your decisions that you need to make. And as a county commissioner, I support those decisions because you have the mitigated risk responsibility for our grandchildren and our children, and I appreciate that. And on one personal privilege note, I want to express to the Gaston County school family the appreciation that's been extended to a former member of this astute organization, Bonnie Reedy.
Oh, yes.
She is
yes.
very appreciative of all the kind words, all the comments, all the contact from current, former, and friends of hers that she had the opportunity to meet and engage with over her term as an employee for Gaston County Schools. She's very appreciative, and I am as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Hovis. We have a first and a second to adjourn. Any more discussion? All in favor? And we are adjourned.